Welcome to the Huggadrum podcast, a life with drums and drumming. I am your host, Angus McCurrach, and you're very welcome. And now, let the drumming begin. Yes, it's the Huggadrum podcast, your rhythmic respite from reality. Fun with drums, including
Drumming joke of the week.
The anagram, drumagram.
and drums for life, wellbeing and drumming.
And now, here is your host from the Shedio. It's himself.
Yes, it's myself. And welcome back, everyone, to the Huggadrum Huggcast. You're all very welcome. And if you've been listening to the other episodes, thank you. Thank you so much for persevering. If this is the first time that you've listened to an episode, you are in for a treat. Because today we are covering everything from research into drumming and mental health. We'll have the drummer's rant, that's coming up very soon. We have a regular drummer's joke of the week, which today is a fantastic story about a talented wee drumming dog. And we've got drumagram. We've also got a guest star on today's programme. Old Archie from the village here is going to be explaining how he's been getting on during lockdown. But now let's get on with the show. We're going to start with a wee bit of a rant about cornflakes and instant coffee. Ever since I was a child, a wee human, a youngster, a wean, as we would say in Scotland, a wean. Ever since I was a boy, I've always been fascinated by the instructions on the side of a cornflakes box. Yes, a cornflakes box. You know, up at the top when it says press here to open packet. Have you ever taken the time to press the cornflakes box in that particular corner where the perforated lines are? Just press it and nothing happens unless, well, the box might crumple. At the very least, you might burst one or two of the little perforations. It certainly doesn't open. I've always thought that was, well, short-sighted. I mean, if you're going to give instructions on how to open a cornflakes box, mine would go along the lines of take your box, place it vertically on a flat surface, use your thumbnail to carefully prise open the perforations on the little tab at the top of the box, and pull the flap of cardboard outwards, thus relieving and creating a hole through which your cornflakes can pour, like sand through a timer. Well, that's what I would say, but all it says is press here. It's quite obvious if you press here, it doesn't work. And I don't know how long cornflakes has been going for. I think probably, certainly for most of the 20th century. Let's say it's been going for 150 years. And maybe they didn't come in boxes at first, but certainly, after all, a few decades at least, nobody's actually thought to improve upon the instructions on a cornflakes packet. And another thing that gets me really, agitated. Instant coffee. Now, by the way, before I go on, the tenuous link between a cornflakes box and instant coffee and drumming is that, well, with an empty or full cornflakes box, you can use it as a percussive instrument. An empty cardboard box, you can use it as a drum. Just pattern it. Get a pair of chopsticks or knitting needles, or just use your fingers and rat-a-tat-tat on the cornflakes packet, and you'll be a serial drummer in no time. Or you could leave the box with some cornflakes in it and just shake it up and down, and you'll get that nice, almost Latin sound that you might get from maracas, the cornflake maraca technique. Likewise with a coffee jar. I mean, once the jar is empty, you could fill it with something like rice or corn. That is popcorn, not tinned corn. That would just sound quite sloppy if you shook it up and down in an empty coffee jar. But some nice, fun, hard popcorn, as I say, some uncooked rice or lentils. Lentils, now that's another good one. I don't think anyone ever uses lentils for cooking purposes. I think lentils are just invented for putting in jars and using them as a shaky thing. Anyway, that's the tenuous link. But going back to my slight irritation about instant coffee, have you ever read the instructions on the side of an instant coffee jar? Well, yeah, some of you are saying possibly. It's a bit like those, if you ask people who read Animal Farm when they were at school, hundreds of hands go up. But actually, hardly anybody read Animal Farm at school. Anyway, going off on a wee tangent there. So, if you read the instructions on the side of a coffee jar, it will tell you do not, and I shall repeat that for anyone out there who's interested, do not add boiling water. Yes, it says that on the side of every jar of instant coffee you will ever come across. Do not add instant. No, do not add boiling water. Now, when I make my instant coffee, I put the kettle on and I press the wee switch at the back and it starts to steam into its existence, its reason for being. It has one job in life, and that is to boil water. So the kettle boils. It boils more quickly if you don't watch it, incidentally. That's something else that you'd put in instructions when you buy a kettle. So you're boiling your water, you put your teaspoonful of instant coffee into your mug, and you wait for the kettle to boil. Now, I guess I have no research to back this up, but I very sincerely believe, I have faith in the belief that 95% of people who make instant coffee let the kettle boil. So, why is it, after decades and decades of instant coffeeness being around, that they haven't invented instant coffee that can take the boiling water? Not only that, has anybody noticed that it tastes different, or it somehow destroys the aroma, or somehow the coffee turns into some toxic substance, or changes into gold? Maybe the alchemists of old, in their pursuit of being able to turn base metals into gold, were missing a trick. Maybe all they needed was a jar of Nescafe and a boiling kettle. So, drums and well-being. So in previous episode we saw the stress drum, and if you remember, all your stress trickles in to the top of your stress drum. Even the small things can cause the drip, drip, drip. But then occasionally something big happens, like the washing machine breaks down, car breaks down, you have a huge argument with a friend or a family member, and that can cause a gush of stress into your stress drum, and it can then overflow, and it happens to all of us. It can happen to all of us, where your stress just overflows and you become anxious, and that doesn't do your mental or physical health any good. So if you remember, at the base of the drum, the stress drum, we had these drumsticks that you can pull out, and they allow the stress to be relieved from the bottom of your stress drum. So, what else can drums do in terms of your mental well-being? And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. I take the position that, I enjoy drumming. I know lots of other people enjoy drumming. But there's more to it than that. I like to think that there is evidence for things, that things can be shown to work, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing any activity that you find enjoyable, because that in itself is a stress reliever. So whether it's playing dominoes, doing crossword puzzles, playing computer games, going for a walk, playing music, all of these things are beneficial. But more specifically, in terms of drumming, I wanted to just talk to you about some of the evidence. So in 2016, so this is now 2021, so 5 years ago, the Royal College of Music in London, they did a study. And what they did is they selected a group of people who were already in mental health services in London. So these were people who had, some of them, their stress levels must have gone way over the top. They were feeling anxious, feeling depressed, to the extent that it was having an impact on their ability to carry out normal daily life. They may have been signed off work or were finding it difficult to cope with work. They may have been prescribed medication. So they had reached that stage that the physicians would often refer to as mild to moderate mental health issues. They were needing some support. So they took a group of people who were already receiving support for that kind of condition, that level of mental health issue, and they offered them initially 6 weeks worth of drumming groups. So they attended a 90-minute drum facilitated group once a week for 6 weeks. And then they actually extended it from 6 weeks to 10 weeks because people were actually getting better. They were improving in terms of their mental health and, in some cases, physical health. And for all you scientists out there, yes, they did have a control group. So there was another group of people from the same category in terms of levels of mental health issues, who were given other activities to do, so for the same 90 minutes for over 6 weeks. And it was found that the control group did not improve to the same extent as the drumming group. But let's look at some of the statistics, because it's really quite incredible. So, what we found was that there was a significant improvement in depression, anxiety, mental well-being, and what's called social resilience that was found in the drumming group, but not in the control group. The improvement in depression had reached 24% by week 6 and 38% by week 10. So in other words, the people who were depressed, there had been an improvement of nearly 40% in their depression by the end of 10 weeks. For people with anxiety, it was 9% in week 6, but 20% after 10 weeks. Social resilience was 16% at the end of 6 weeks and 23% by week 10. And improvements in mental well-being was 8% by week 6 and 16% by week 10. And across the 10 weeks, so over the 10-week period, there was a shift also from pro-inflammatory immune profile towards an anti-inflammatory immune profile. So what does that mean? Well, that means that in terms of people's immune systems, there had also been an improvement in the way that their physical bodies responded. So that's the evidence, and you will see from the notes, you can go and have a look at this yourself. And that's partly behind my passion for facilitating drumming groups. So there's the evidence. It's out there, and there's lots more. Just have a Google for drumming and mental health, and there's lots of research being done. It's fun, so don't get too caught up in the effects, the specific effects on things like depression, anxiety, and stress. It can be fun for everyone, but if you are someone affected, it can be very helpful, and it can add to your repertoire of activities and things that you do to relieve and reduce stress and to help you cope with levels of depression. But remember, if you get to the stage where you feel you really can't cope, talk to your GP or phone one of the helplines that will always be available in your area. This is partly sponsored by Buchan Counselling, based in Peterhead. So if you're in the northeast of Scotland and need some advice or support, please get in touch with Buchan Counselling through info@buchancounselling.com. But in terms of COVID, we all know it's not been possible to run facilitated drum circles in the past, nearly 2 years now, because obviously we can't congregate together and have a shared experience. But in the UK, it looks like we're going to be able to start doing that soon. So if you are interested in attending facilitated drum circles in the northeast of Scotland or in the Central Belt, so Edinburgh, Glasgow, then please get in touch and let me know, because I am now beginning to make preparations for starting up facilitated drum circles again. Just get in touch at Huggcast@huggadrum.com. Just note your interest and be in touch. So I hope you found that little piece there about mental health and drumming interesting, and if you do want to sign up, then just let us know. Again, it's Huggcast@huggadrum.com. But now it's time for
Drumming joke of the week.
this week's joke. Tells the tale of a very intelligent dog. There are lots of intelligent animals with 4 legs. We have some llamas near us in the northeast of Scotland. Yes, llamas. Magnificent animals, but if you get too close, they can spit. A bit like some guitarists I've known in the past. But that's another story. So, an intelligent dog. We're going to call him Ringo, Great name for a dog. I used to play in a band called Hogswash a long time ago in Edinburgh. Hogswash was a fantastic band. Oh, it's been described as Cajun, blues, all sorts of different critiques were given of Hogswash, but we had a good time. And one of the guys in Hogswash, Steve Park, Steve used to own a music shop in Leith in Edinburgh, along with his brother Mike. So Steve had this shop called Live Music in Leith Walk in Edinburgh. And one day I went in there. I think I was looking for some drum skins. Something had broken, so I needed it fixed. Needed a new drum skin. Went in to the shop, and there's this dog in front of me in the queue. Now this dog understands what a queue is. Now that's actually quite interesting in itself, because queuing is quite a British thing to do. Certainly a Scottish thing to do. I've been all over Europe, and the concept of a queue doesn't have the same significance. It seems to be more about, let's see if I can jostle to the front first. And queuing doesn't really seem to play that much of a part in the thinking in different parts of Europe. An interesting subject in itself. Queuing. Anyway, so I'm standing in this queue, dog in front of me, and this dog has a note in its mouth. Just a bit of paper wrapped up in its mouth. And eventually the dog gets to the front of the queue, and he gets on his hind legs and puts his front paws on the glass counter. I was amazed. This dog knew it had to wait, but once it got to the front of the queue, it knew that it then had to present itself to Steve, who was on the other side of the counter. And so Steve leaned over and took the note out of the dog's mouth. And wrapped up in this note was a £10 note. So the dog had obviously been sent for something with a £10 note. So Steve, who obviously had encountered this magnificent animal before, read the note, and it said, "1 pair of drumsticks, please." So Steve reached behind him and took down a pair of drumsticks, and he wrapped them up. Nice plastic bag, put some sellotape round it. And then he thought, okay, I need to get the change for this dog. Now the drumsticks cost £8. So this dog was due £2 in change. Steve looked at me and winked. I thought, Steve's up to something. And Steve whispered, he says, "This dog, he won't know how much change it is to get. I'll just send him away with the drumsticks and he'll never know." So I didn't have the time to debate the morals of that particular avenue with Steve. None of my business, I was there as a customer. So I just watched as Steve wrapped up the drumsticks, put them in the dog's mouth, or so he attempted to do, because the dog growled. The dog knew something was not quite right. So Steve realised, okay, this dog realises it needs to come home with some change. So he reaches into the cash register behind him and ding, opens up the cash register and takes out £1. His logic is, when the dog knows he's to get change, doesn't know how much change he has to get. So he puts £1 in an envelope, seals the envelope, wraps it up with the drumsticks, and again attempts to put this in the mouth of the dog. The dog is having none of this. Says the dog. The dog clearly knows it's to get £2 in change. So Steve gives up at this stage and shrugs his shoulders, goes back to the cash register, takes out another £1, puts the £2 coins in the envelope, wraps it up, and then successfully puts the bundle of sticks and change in the dog's mouth. And the dog's tail is wagging and his ears are flapping back and forward. This is now a happy, content dog. I was absolutely stunned. My admiration for this animal was incredible. I know people who would never have been able to transact in such a way. This dog knew what it was doing. And so I said to Steve, listen, I'm going to come back. I'm just looking for some drum skins. I want to find out where this dog belongs. So I decided I'm going to follow this dog home. This is the smartest animal I have seen in a long time. So the dog turns around and sits at the front door of the shop with its little mouth clenching the drumsticks, looking up at the doorknob. It can't open the door. So then he turns round and he looks at me with the big hound dog eyes, and I thought, okay, this dog is asking me to open the door. Being the obliging person I am, I opened the door, and the dog turned to me and went ruff ruff. It could have been saying thank you. I can't think of any other reason why it would go ruff ruff. The dog was saying thank you. I was even more impressed with the intelligence of this dog. I decided I'm going to follow it. So the dog patters out into the street and starts to walk down the pavement. And he gets to a pedestrian crossing. One of these pedestrian crossings where there is, the green and red man and a button you press just to tell the machine that you want to cross the road. The dog again gets on its hind legs and presses the button with its paw. It raises a right paw and quite definitely pushes the button, and then sits down and waits. I'm standing behind the dog, again stunned by the intelligence it's shown. And then after 30 seconds or so, the green man comes and the dog starts to patter, patter, patter across the road to the other side. Why did the dog cross the road? To get to the other side. Anyway, it then continues to walk down the street. It comes across another pedestrian crossing. Again, gets on its hind legs, presses the button, we wait for the green man, and off he goes. This dog is absolutely fantastic. And then at one stage, not only does he press the button at a pedestrian crossing, he realises that there is a fire engine. Big red fire engine, flashing lights, coming flying up the road. And the dog realises, even although the green man says green, he needs to wait. And he does. This dog sits there and waits for the fire engine to go by. Oh, this dog is so smart, so intelligent. I've heard of talking dogs. There are dogs who are supposed to have been able to talk. I have also heard of a dog who was on Mastermind, a quiz show in the UK. Dog was on Mastermind, and he was asked, what do you call the structure on top of a house? Roof, he said. Yep, he was right, the roof. Next question was, how do you describe one side of sandpaper? Rough, he said. Again, absolutely correct. Anyway, so that was about the dog on Mastermind. This is not the same dog, this is a different dog, although probably matching the Mastermind dog with intelligence. The other thing I noticed when the dog was walking was the pitter-patter was so precise. I realised that it was playing a rhythm as it walked. It was playing paradiddles. Now, a paradiddle, for all you pipe drummers out there, will know it's Mama Papa, Mama Papa. I know the... which if you play fast enough becomes a drum roll. This dog was walking along the street, not as fast, but like that. This dog was incredible. Still had its drumsticks in its mouth, its little envelope of change, and was paradiddling itself along the road. It knew when the fire engine was coming and knew how to behave. So then, it gets to the front steps of a house in Edinburgh, and it's clearly arrived at its destination. So it pitter-patters up the stairs towards the front door of this house. It gets on its hind legs and presses the doorbell. And then he waits, and I can hear shouting and mumbling and grumbling coming from inside the house. The door suddenly opens. Crash. Inside, a guy holding some cymbals under one arm and quite clearly wearing drummer's shorts and t-shirt. He has obviously been practising his drums, and the dog comes to the door. He's been waiting for his drumsticks, and I was outraged. He'd whacked the dog across the ear, grabbed his drumsticks and slammed the door. Now the dog wasn't injured, it wasn't a hard slap, it was just a whack. I was so outraged. I was incensed. I was incensed. I took it upon myself to give this drummer a piece of my mind. So I went up the steps, dog still sitting there, kind of looks at me. I don't know what he said, but he looked at me, probably thinking, what the hell is he doing here? And I rang the doorbell. More mumbling and grumbling from behind the door. The door opens. Yes, what do you want? I said, well, I'll tell you what I want. I want to give you a piece of my mind. Who are you to come and tell me? I said, I have just been at live music in Leithwalk. I went in there to get some drumskins, and I saw your dog wait patiently in the queue. He then got on his hind legs, paused on the countertop, and presented the note that presumably you had written because you couldn't be bothered going to the music shop. Then the dog knew it was to get change. It did not even think for 1 minute that it was going to go coming back to you with your drumsticks and not have the change. It knew to get change. It came back with the drumsticks. Now, whilst it was on its journey, I followed your dog. He stopped at six pedestrian crossings on the way. He each time got on his legs, pressed the button, waited for the green man. In one event, in one situation, there was a fire engine coming, and he knew that he had to wait for the fire engine to go past. Your dog is probably one of the most intelligent animals I have ever seen. He negotiated traffic, he negotiated streets, he negotiated payment for your drumsticks. He gets to his house, he comes up the steps, he knows to press the bell. And all you can do when you open the door is whack him across the ear. What is all that about? And the man looks at me and says, it's the third time this week he's forgotten his door key.
Drumming joke of the week.
So, I'm very excited about this next bit. We have a contribution from a guest star. This man is a legend. It's old Archie from the village of Funnyval in the northeast of Scotland. And we asked Archie, what was his experience of lockdown? What was it like to be socially isolated? And he told us to feck off. But then the next day, I woke up and found that someone had stuffed an old sock through our letterbox, and in the sock was a cassette tape. And what you're about to hear is old Archie's own rendition of his lockdown experiences. The sun comes up and the sun gangs down. The horns on the clock keep going around. I just get up and it's time to lie down. Life gets michty teaches. My bit's untied, but I dinna care. I'm no thinking of going anywhere. I'd hate to wash and comb my hair, and I just can't be bothered. The water in the well's getting lower and lower. Can I take a bath for 6 months more? But I've heard it said, and it's richt I'm sure, that too much bathing will weaken you. I open the door and midges swarm in. Shut the door and I'm sweating again. And in the process I've cracked my shin, ane damn thing after another. Albrun Cuddy, he must be sick. I jabbed his bahookie with a pin on a stick. He humped his back, but he wouldn't kick. There's something squinty-eyed somewhere. A moose gnawing on the pantry door. She's been at it for a month or more. When she gets through, she'll sure be sore, 'cause there ain't bugger all in there. Sheepdog howling, safe forlorn, laziest Doug that ever was born. He's howling 'cause he's sitting on a thorn and just too tired to move o'er. The bothy roof leaks and the lum it leans, and there's a hole in the earth of my all blue jeans, and it ate the last of the toast and beans. Can he survive on Nathan? Coos gone dry and the hens can't lay. Fish quit biting last Saturday. Troubles are piling up day by day. And now I'm getting dandruff. Grief and misery, pains and woes, debts and taxes, and so it goes. And now I'm getting a caul in my nose. Life gets michty tedious. Thank you so much to old Archie for his contribution. Fantastic, magnificent. Now it's time for the drumagram. So, last week's drumagram, the answer was crash cymbal. Crash cymbal. So there's different kinds of cymbals that you can play with a drum kit. Typically these might be a ride cymbal. That's the ones that kind of go ping, 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 ping. Keep the rhythm going. And then you've got the cymbals that you crash. That's where the word comes from. The ones that go every so often to emphasize a beat. So that's a crash cymbal. So if you got that, well done. And now, here is this week's anagram. It's a bit rude, actually, but it's not too rude. It's not offensive, I hope. And for those of you that are not watching, the anagram is mix turds. Mix turds. So it's MICKSTURDS. What is that an anagram of related to drumming? Well, that's the anagram, and that signifies the end of episode 3. I can't believe we've got as far as the end of episode 3. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the podcast. Please subscribe on YouTube, and please subscribe to whatever podcast platform you use to listen to your podcasts. It's been a pleasure, as always, to be with you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you again in episode 4. Bye! The Huggadrum Huggcast is a co-production between Huggadrum and the Huggadrumshop.com, along with hand-picked drums. If you would like to buy drums ready-made or kits to make drums, please go to the Huggadrumshop.com. We'd also like to thank buckingcounselling.com for their support with this production.